Donc, merci à tous. On va pouvoir reprendre cette deuxième séquence de cette première formation, de cette première session dédiée aux besoins des autorités publiques responsables de la réponse anti-pollution. Et donc, nous allons enchaîner avec des exemples de mise en œuvre à l'international et en France. Donc, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir 3 intervenants pour cette deuxième séquence. Et donc, sans plus tarder, I have the pleasure to give the floor to Hazel Christie for the Coastguard Agency of United Kingdom.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name's Hazel Christie, and as Clémence said, I work for the Maritime and Coastguard Agency over in the UK. I work within the counter-pollution and salvage team as the environmental scientist advisor. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're made up as a team, how we get involved in the training, both in terms of the commercial side of things and also the domestic and governmental side of things, and also a little bit more about the scheme that we use and what we're looking at doing in the future. Is it the green button? Or just next slide? Sorry. Apologies. Apologies, sorry about this. There's only a few slides, so if it's at the back, we can just move them on one at a time, and I'll talk a bit about our branch, which we're based over in the UK in Southampton, but something that's, we cover the whole of the UK, which is not completely unique in terms of government departments, but in terms of some of the stakeholders that we deal with, some of them are devolved administration. So we do cover the whole of the UK, and we're a relatively small branch or team. And so that means that we have quite a unique position in that we get a lot of exposure to incidents and exercises. So we have our head of branch who'd be our main point of contact when it comes to international liaison and engagement. So he would be the front of house, as it were, for things like Bonn and Manche Plan, and he's also the lead for the work that we're doing with the British Overseas Territories, which I'll talk about in a bit. It's myself and a couple of other colleagues that are on the environmental side of things. So we work very closely with local authorities in terms of setting up things that we call environment groups, and also the delivery of the training. With the training, if people are interested in cost recovery, which a lot of local authorities are, that's when I can pull upon my other colleagues, Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry. Or Jerry and Tom. And they look at the cost recovery and the claims, and they manage our stockpile, of which we've got several based around the UK. And we use that stockpile both in terms of incident response and also the training that we deliver to local authorities. In terms of our counter-pollution and salvage officers, we have them regionally based around the UK, and that is advantageous because not only do they look after their ports and harbours, they've also got a lot of local knowledge. So when I am going around the UK delivering it to what we might describe as local resilience forums, made up of several local authorities, they can come in with their regional expertise and support there as well. Yep, so next slide. So these are the sort of courses that we deliver. We have our counterparts in OPRED, which are the Offshore Petroleum Regulators for Energy and Decommissioning. They sit under a different government department, which used to be Business and Energy and Industrial Strategy. It's now changed last month to Net Zero, but you don't have to worry about that too much. It's just OPRED, but if you find it slightly differing on .gov, that's why, because it's only happened last month. And as you're all probably quite aware, the OPRC Convention requires national authorities to have in place a process of oil spill training. So we work with OPRED to develop this scheme, and also we have a national standard which is applicable across the board for all the training providers. And basically that ensures that staff not only in the ports and harbours, but also our terrestrial staff in other government departments and local authorities are suitably trained to respond. So we've adapted some of those standards, some of the model IMO courses, and made them more relevant to the UK. And the commercial courses, the IMO courses that are required for ports and harbours to have, they are delivered by contractors and other accredited providers. But we've used the same programme, accredited by this separate body, the Nautical Institute, to accredit our own courses. Because in the UK, whilst we have the Civil Contingencies Act, so local authorities, they don't have a statutory obligation or a statutory requirement to respond to oil spills per se, but they do have a requirement to plan and prepare for emergencies. So it's a bit of an umbrella term, but they do have a duty to plan for and prepare. So this is where we can come in and support them with the provision of training. And so we've got 2 courses accredited under this scheme, which is delivered from the MCA to shoreline authorities. And next slide, please. So I mentioned we have our stockpiles. We've got our main ones in the centre there, and that's available online if you did want to have a look and interrogate it and look at the specs. On the right-hand side, you can see across the UK, I mentioned we've got the different devolved administrations and the different local resilience forums around the UK. In terms of the delivery of these courses, so we have 2 main courses, the national course, which is the LA01 course, and that's a 3-day course aimed at a more tactical and strategic level. There's no practical element to that. It is going over the main topics, and I'll got the next slide about the syllabus, but it's a tactical and strategic, so looking more at perhaps the slightly senior or more senior levels of people within local authorities who might be making decisions at that sort of level. And that we were talking about gamifying earlier, and that would include a large tabletop exercise with a fictional location, which we can then use to tease out some of the key points that we'd like them to work through during the course of an incident. The LA02 is the beach supervisor course. That's a 2-day, 1 day of theory and 1 day of practical, and it's very much aimed at operational staff that would be going out onto the beaches. So I deliver that training with support from our contractors, using our stockpile of equipment, taking it down to the beach and showing the shoreline authorities who would be leading on that, how things could be done, what we might be providing to support them, as they would be the lead authority when the pollution impacts the shoreline area. So this is an idea about what we cover in terms of the syllabus. You can see our fictional location there of Tiber and Bettina. So the national course, we look at the National Contingency Plan, which is our own public-facing document outlining what we would do in terms of a national spill response and all the different tiers in between. A very popular one is also the operational response cells and the environment group. That just really embeds the roles and responsibilities that are required from the different personnel that would be involved. We cover all the key topics as the IMO courses would in just a little bit more detail in the national course versus the beach supervisor course. And it's also supplemented with a cost recovery presentation delivered by the subject matter experts in my team, and also a media one, as we are looking at the slightly more senior local authority emergency planning personnel who might be asked to actually step up and deliver that sort of level of response and be a media face to the public. So the beach supervisor course, you get a bit more involved in the equipment side, as I mentioned. They're looking at the practical training on the beach, so we look a bit more into the equipment, and we do get a little bit more in the weeds with the specifications of it. So they want to know how much they can recover per hour, for example, and what capabilities the equipment does actually have that we can use to support them. We deliver we have the ring-fence budget for 6 beach supervisor courses per year and 3 national courses per year. And we normally have between 30 and 60 delegates per course. So if you think of the map before, and I talked about the different local resilience fora around the UK, they would bid for a course. So whilst they're trying to plan and prepare for these emergencies, they might see on their risk register that there is a gap, and they bid for the courses, which I can then review in terms of our spreadsheet and looking on Google Maps to see where we have and have not been in the past, and trying to keep them up to speed, because I know they have quite a high staff turnover in some of these local authorities. During the pandemic, as I mentioned before, it wasn't really possible to get out and do some of these courses. So there is a platform called Resilience Direct in the UK, which is available to all the government departments and some externals as well. And that's where we're hosting a lot of the course materials that I deliver. And we delivered a course based on the national course here. All the topics were recorded, and that's still hosted on there. We're developing that catalogue as we go as well and adding to it so it can grow. So if people would like some pre-learning for the courses that we deliver, or alternatively as a sort of refresher. So that wasn't accredited under the same scheme as these courses are, but it's something that we provided as a measure in between to fill that gap. Next slide. So I mentioned the British Overseas Territories, so Sam Woznicki, our head of branch, would be leading on that side of things. This is the IMO, or what's also known as the IIIC code. So the IMO Instruments and Implementation Code looks at coastal state responsibilities. And so we are going out to, not me personally, I'm more focused on the UK, but certainly our head of branch and some other colleagues have been to all of those in black there, so all around the world, basically trying to develop IMO courses that are specific and useful for that particular location. They've described it as an enhanced Tier 1 capability, so there is a level of equipment there, but they are delivering the IMO courses 1, 2, and 3, so it's a mix of some work that we are doing ourselves and also supported by some contractors. And this again has a ring-fence budget from the Foreign Commonwealth Office. The two in grey at the bottom, we are doing some work with Gibraltar, but they already had a little bit of capability as they had developed. And Guernsey is a slightly different matter as well because it's a Crown dependency. So whilst they don't pay tax, we couldn't then use the government ring-fence budget for it, but I've developed a bespoke course for Guernsey. So they paid for all the costs associated and I donated my time. So that was the work around there. So we do a lot of work internationally as well and with some of the other overseas territories. Next slide, please. So with that ring-fence budget, hopefully, unless there's any major changes in the funding, I think that's been underway for about 1 to 2 years now, and there's probably about 3 or 4 years to go on that. So whilst all the countries have been visited, it's very difficult to get absolutely everyone trained up in one go, so there's still quite a few more people they'd like to get out and reach. The Guernsey course was very, very successful, so Jersey's also requested something similar be run. And as I've been developing those training packages on the Resilience Direct platform, the environment groups and standing environment groups that we have in the UK, which are there as a response cell to provide advice in an incident response and also during exercises, they've identified that there's a gap in knowledge with liaison officers specific for the environment group. So I'm collating information from various different sources and organisations to try to develop something bespoke for that as well. So we've got the liaison training and also the environment group chair training, which is going to be a sort of dual package, so I can deliver that to the environment groups around the UK. You'll notice the different colours, again, that represents the devolved administrations and some parts of England that have been split into several different standing environment groups. They're mostly made up of 3 core members: the waste regulator, statutory nature conservation body, and a fisheries conservation body, and that varies depending on if you're looking at England, Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. So that's the bit of the background to the colours there. We do a little bit of ad hoc training as well, which we might formalise in due course. For example, there was an incident in Cornwall last year, and we did some reactive SCAT training, so shoreline cleanup assessment technique training for the local authority down there so they could continue to monitor the beach that had been affected. I mentioned there has been a change to the departmental overarching department to OPRED, so that's something that we are going to possibly reflect in an amendment to the standard, and we've got a meeting coming up in April. I think there's only going to be some minor amendments to the standard. However, we're going to have a discussion and see if there anything fundamentally needs to be changed in terms of the strategy there. I added this last point, the ongoing international Coastguard interest across all functions of the MCA, because I was asking around saying what have we got in the pipeline, and it's something we always offer out to people if they are interested and would like to get more information on the UK Coastguard. You're more than welcome to, and that has been taken up by quite a few different member states. I think New Zealand's the most recent one, Brunei, Thailand, and I think Canada's also, who's on the call and be coming up soon, they've been interested in the work across the Coastguard, both in terms of search and rescue, but also counter-pollution. So we deliver those as and when necessary. So that was a whistle-stop tour of everything. I believe we've got questions at the end. So thank you very much.